right. So, you asked me about the trip to Bangkok. I've actually had several conversations with people since then, but they were not recorded. So, um, I'll tell the story for the recording. Um, Actually, I think that I pointed out that I have a couple of stories to tell, and the easy story is that when we arrived back home, uh, intact with all of the business complete, it felt really a big relief to be home. And it reminded me then of the idea of the hindrance, because the Buddha talks about the hindrance of arriving home with all your goods intact, uh, and you feel really relieved, just like that mental hindrance. But I experienced that in the actual reality of it, and it reminded me very strongly of how spot on the Buddha is in talking about things like that. And the other story is the story of that I intended when I started off on the journey. My intention was going to be to smile at everyone I came in contact with. And in the process of that, I, I, I one thing is I wound up recognizing just how many people there were. Starting with 7 different taxi drivers, 2 van drivers, a bus driver, people worked on the boat, airline pilots, ticket agents, and the list just goes on, cashiers and food service and many, many different things in that regard. Uh, and that especially the work at the embassy. Um, it was interesting because the Thai people will smile back. They'll respond. They like that. Uh, Even the first woman at the embassy was Thai, and the second woman was American, and she didn't appreciate that I was smiling at her. It's like difference in culture. So um, those are the 2 stories that I have. The second one has got a lot of detail. One of the details is that on the evening that we were in Bangkok, I stayed over on the area of Soi Nana, which is a big tourism area, especially for Muslims, and they've got fairly good prices for rooms. So we stayed there, and we stayed across from the Soy, just a step away from an Ethiopian restaurant. And I remember having Ethiopian food one time before and how good it was. So we went over there to eat. Kitty was more interested in playing game on her cell phone, and Tam didn't like the food. But I praised it, told the woman that we enjoyed it very much. And when we got back to the hotel, I told Tam, no, I didn't like it much either. And she said, well, why did you say that? And I said, well, because it was my responsibility. If I had told her that we don't like your food, then that would have made her feel bad. And so I'm reflecting upon that with you in the sense of uh, that the obligation to tell the truth is a little higher than the obligation to state the facts exactly the way they are. That the real truth is that I appreciate that she's in business. I wish her well.
Yeah, okay.
So, how's it been for you since we've last talked?
Yeah, pretty interesting. I yeah, I so I had some different situations at work which were like which needed a lot of my brain capacity. So and then I could like yeah, I mean it was just interesting to see like how still the circumstances on the outside can how they have a big impact, and then if things cool down a bit again, then you can start to look back a bit, and that's what I was doing the last few days, and I could also see that basically like lots of stuff that I work with in my sits, like appreciating the moment, appreciating every sensation that feels good, and then try to encourage this. That this is basically, I'm basically just trying to do the same thing all the time, um, because there's always things that don't feel good and things that do feel good, and you can always you can always appreciate things that feel good, and yeah, and also it became clear to me again that that there's like lots of layers of basically teaching, which sounds pretty simple, but it can go really, really deep. Like for example, the thing about doubt is like on one level you can say like in a long term I can see that this will work if I do it, and but you can see this also in smaller and smaller like time frames of now. You can see like, okay, now I had a little bit of doubt that I I can't feel good with those circumstances around me, but that's just another doubt. So if I can drop it, then I can feel good. But I think that probably this will probably never end. You can always refine it. You can always find smaller layers where you still have a little bit of doubt. And I also like I see this again and again. That I just have a big tendency for restlessness, and thinking that I need to do this and I need to do get where I can feel good, and I switch back to victim's position and think, oh, I'm not good enough. I first have to do this. That's what I was seeing the last few days.
That sounds very good. And part of the reason that I'm saying that is because you're beginning to see this stuff in kind of a playful way. That it's not a huge burden. You're not in the sense of being a victim, being victimized by the views of what's actually going on in your life. That you can actually start to enjoy that the fact that you can see what's going on, start to play with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, what really helped me with that is I told you before, right? I started like practicing seriously with the Mind Illuminated, with the book from Chuladasa.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, have you read it, or are you aware of the?
Some of the students have read it. I haven't heard anybody say anything that he has written that I would disagree with.
Yeah, I think one of his teachers. I don't know if he really studied with them, but one of the teachers he got lots of stuff from is also Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. So I think that would fits a lot of stuff. Probably would fit in with what
I'm
you.
glad to hear that he is actually acknowledging that. You're the first one to say that Chuladasa acknowledges Bhikkhu Buddhadasa. I think that he's had an effect on a lot of people.
Yeah, Yeah, so he says in one interview, he says that that the Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was a great influence, and he also has like a recommended reading list, and there are two Bhikkhu Buddhadasa books in there, so one on Anapanasati, and so yeah, I think he was a great influence, probably, yeah. And so the book has like the main, I would say the main part, which are the practice stages, which is basically like Anapanasati stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like appendices, and one of this is like the what's called the mindful review, which is like you basically review your day, and look for how mindful you were, what were your motivations, and were those actions you took, were they like based on craving or aversion, and based on the assumption that if you do something you will feel good because of the outside thing, or yeah. So you just reflect on your day, and I've been trying to do this, and this really like helped me, because you basically like try to relive the situations where you then did something like based in craving, and you try to think about it. Okay, was that wise or not, or did it help or not? And yeah, that was uh, that was a part for me to like get behind some motivations of my everyday stuff.
Well, here's what I would have to say about that. Please understand that some of it is in humor, and that is that I like the idea of a day because it fits in with one of the teachings of the Buddha. In fact, it's Majjhima Nikaya number 131, where it's talking about one auspicious day, or actually the word is night, but the way that we calculate time, the way that they did that in the time of the Buddha, they did it using the word night, uh, just like in the hotel industry. We don't say I'm going to stay one day. We say I'm going to stay one night, when in fact you're going to stay both one day and one night. They're not going to kick you out as soon as the sun comes up. And so, in that regard, that whole idea of a day, I would say, would be the outer boundary, because the outer boundary of the day is that there is a demarcation that's very clear. An
Mm.
example of that would be that I would not recommend people go back reminiscing in the past, try to
Yeah,
look at
yeah,
things last week, etc., like that. That we got to keep this stuff really, really current.
yeah. I see what you mean. Um, I think it's more like to make it a habit. So it just says it should be at the same time every day. So like your morning meditation, just to have it a habit, and it's more like this. It's not like uh, this day ends this day, and yeah. But I see what you mean.
Well, the ultimately, when I'm using the word ultimately, I'm talking about it in the sense of physical reality. The ultimate would be to be doing that in this moment,
Yeah, yeah,
so that your day was reviewed all day long, basically.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that and so there is some value in reflection, but mostly, when even with short-term memory, we don't remember enough to really see what's going on. That it's better to start looking at it right now, especially with the issue of feelings. How do I feel right now? Because that is that boundary marker that the Buddha and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa puts in there, is that that's the point that you need to keep track of right now.
Yeah.
If you're wise at that point of contact with your feelings, now you can choose to do something about it. Not sitting on your floor at 9 o'clock in the evening saying, wow, this is what I could have done at 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
And so, but I can see that in the beginning, as a beginner's practice, that would be really worthwhile. But that the intention would be to shorten that time period.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, it really helped in situations that were just yeah, well, there are some intense situations where you don't remember to be right now if you're not really advanced, I think. And for these situations, it's really helpful, in my opinion.
It's kind of funny though that we can remember things at 9 o'clock in the evening that happened at 9 this morning, but at 9 this morning we weren't aware of them.
Yeah,
That is so funny too.
yeah.
And yet the mind somehow operates like that.
Hmm.
But the question is, the stuff that you didn't see this morning that you do tonight during your sitting meditation, how much of that was manufactured
Yeah, that's.
after the fact?
Hmm.
How much are we plugging in there?
Yeah. And
And
building, like rebuilding the story, kind of, right?
exactly. The best that
Yeah.
we can hope for is a rebuilt story. So when after I tell you these things to be careful about that,
Hmm.
now I encourage you to do it.
Yeah.
Just so long as we know that the real intention is to know what's going on now.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's right. And I have one further question along the same lines. I I mean the visual sense is the strongest sense of humans, right? So like it has the biggest bandwidth directly to our brain compared to the other senses. So would it be beneficial to like do some formal training with the seeing? Because when I'm sitting in my formal meditation, I usually do it with eyes closed, and I can see sometimes how like how I'm struggling if there's lots of visual stuff to like stay in a really mindful state, or it gets easier to forget um, if there's lots of visual stuff happening. So do you have any like recommendations for that, or is this just with COVID time?
Yes, I do. And that what I'm about to talk about has probably more to do with martial arts
Mm-hmm.
than it does with actual meditation. But that the point that I want to make is the extreme peripheral vision on my left eye. How far over with in my left eye can I see with the eye pointed this way as opposed to actually trying to see over there? All right, and start playing with your eyes in that way so that you're actually going to start training your eyes and the part of the brain that works with visual acuity to start seeing things in the form of movement, to start being quite aware of peripheral movements. Now, how that reflects back to Buddha is that it keeps us much more in the moment, starting to pay attention to not just what we're looking at directly, but start opening our gaze
Yeah,
intentionally. All
yeah.
right. Um, there are other techniques that have been known. One of them is called the Bates method from a medical doctor back in the 1930s. And that what he recommended was um, depending upon the brightness of the light, but to start being able to look at bright, bright light. Uh, um, for instance, you can take the sun and block it out with your hand and then start moving the hand so that the eye can actually get full light. for a very short time. This is what he recommends, that the eyes have a huge amount of input of light. That normally the iris will shut down, and because of the iris shutting down, a smaller area of the back. And so by opening it up to the light, that actually floods the entire back part of the eyeball, helping it to rejuvenate itself in a way. But you don't want to do it too much. And the limit that you know is that if you stared at a light too long or that was too bright, then it leaves an after image that can be seen even with your eyes open. That's when you've gone too far. All right. So these are two things that I can tell you about, but there's also some more stuff in the sense of recognizing that there's another part of the sensory system that works in conjunction with seeing. And that's the proprioceptive system in the body. The body feeling system is almost like a radar or an antenna. And so our peripheral vision, when incorporated with the body, will allow a 360-degree way of experiencing things that can be conscious. Now we know that this stuff is unconscious for a lot of people, and let us say that it's unconscious for some and subconscious for others. The others that is subconscious, it means that it's hard to sneak up on them. When people are really unconscious, then it's really easy to sneak right up on them because they don't have any peripheral awareness. All right. What we can do now that you mention it is to bring it into conscious awareness. Start to work with this stuff. Start to recognize that there is more to the body than just the breathing or the touch of the cloth. That's one of the reasons, and I know that you're in Germany. I can see the hat you're wearing, but I'll mention it anyway. And that is that you might experiment with practicing meditation shirtless, without a shirt, so that you can get more feeling and experience of the air that surrounds you. And if it also happens to be a bit cold or a bit chilling, then experience that chill in a kind of delightful way. There is something, and in fact, the Europeans, they know about this. I don't know what they call them. They've got special names for people who go swimming in the winter in the ice, and it's very invigorating, very exhilarating.
Yeah. I do like for the last half year. I do take like cold showers in the morning, so I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so exposing the body to the air rather than covering it up goes hand in hand with of opening the mind rather than keeping it covered up. So opening the body and letting all of the sensation to come in, kind of flood in. In fact, you begin to recognize, wow, what a flood we live in. There is so much happening all at the same time, so much sensory input. It's just unbelievable how much there is going on. But what we do, in fact, is that we'll see one thing, latch on it, attach to it through the concept or the operation of perception and the recognition of it. And while the mind is doing that, it's no longer paying attention to what's going on.
Yeah. I can really like that's one thing I could really see in the last few weeks is in my meditation. It's when there are thoughts and I then think, oh shit, there was a thought again. then I don't get out of the spiral. But if I just like stop on a dime and kind of try to sense as much as I can around the thought and body sensations, everything, then it gets kind of flowy, and I don't like objectify it. and then there's a like opening, and then I get like a step deeper in my meditation. Like, so this is what you're talking about, right? Basically.
Yes, and the Buddha mentions it this way: when the scene is merely the scene,
Mm-hmm.
and the herd is merely the herd, and when the sense is merely sensed, and the cognized or the touch is merely the touch, that's the state of the Buddha. That's the Buddha state,
Mm-hmm.
is to be not in a way of um, trying to evaluate or bring it to the level of perception for the internal object. We
Mm-hmm.
don't internalize anything, we just stay with the senses. And by doing that, it's like an, an unbelievable rush. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a huge rush because there's so much happening all at the same time. And this is a really worthwhile state to be in, and the closer you can get into that state, the better. It's really, really nice just to sit and just enjoy.
Yeah, it's really like really refreshing, right? It's like yeah, like you can recharge your batteries kind of in that state.
Yes, it is a state of relaxed, but it's also a state of alert. It's
Yeah,
both alert and relaxed, but it's not doing anything,
yeah,
just watching.
mm-hmm.
All right. And that this state of watching or just noticing how much there is going on all at the same time is what Mahasi is shooting for
Mm-hmm.
when he's talking about rising, falling, touching, sitting, and noting. But he's talking about beginning to note all the stuff that's going on. But what the Westerners hear when they hear the word note is like you got to write down a note to yourself on a notepad. All right, and that takes so much time mentally that the noting needs to be
Mm-hmm.
a
Which
kind of noting that's not labeling. So the
yeah,
labeling is the problem.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. For me, it's like it's the same. Like when you do anapanasati, you start with maybe if you're really a beginner, you start with a visualization of the breath, even though you don't try to do it, but you just do it. And then after a while, you let that go, and you just feel like there. And after some time, you even let this go, and it's just some sensation. And that's what you're trying to describe, right? With the noting that at one time you just have to drop the mental note.
Right. We can bring that. I wouldn't call it bring it to a halt, but put it into a place where it's not a part of what's going on,
Not
or that when it comes up, we can use it um, as a reminder to not bother doing that.
mm-hmm,
That's too much work to do. Is to label the things that
mm-hmm.
we're having too much fun just allowing the experience of the moment.
Yeah, just like let the flood come, right?
Exactly, exactly so. Well, I'm glad to hear that this is coming for you, that you're beginning to play with all of the stuff that you're seeing that's going on.
Yeah, I mean it's if I if I have don't have lots of stress in my daily life, then I can most of my sits can go there. But for me, my main work is right now to be satisfied with this and to be satisfied with that I can't do this in daily life and don't get like discouraged if I can't get there, but be happy with all the little things and yeah, because I I mean I see that I can't force anything. I mean, I just have to be happy with what's be there, and then it will grow on its own, right?
That's very good. That's amazing. That's exactly the way that that things are going to go. And in fact, that fits in with noble right view completely. That in fact, this ordinary right view that we want to get involved with and then do stuff and fix it and make it all right and all of that kind of stuff. But super mundane right view is just more interested in how things actually are.
Mm. But yeah, I mean, this doesn't mean that you don't, like, if you know there are certain circumstances that like lead to some things, so you still create causes so the effects can come, right?
There is an old story that I know from my high school days when the students would drive the school buses for the kids. And that this one instructor, or the one who was in charge of figuring it out, he had a question that he would ask. And the question he would ask is, on a particular mountain pass, how close can you get the bus to the edge of the road without putting people in danger? And the answer that he's looking for is that I don't want to take the bus to as close to the edge as I can. I want to keep the bus as far away from the edge as I can to drive correctly. That'll keep this kid safe. All right. That eliminates the daredevils. All right. Dhamma dudes and lions need to be a little bit daredevilish in this regard. All right. Because the closer to the edge of nibbana that you get, the more likely you are to stumble and fall over the edge. And so I thought that I'd exactly. And in that regard with the meditation, by putting ourselves right out there in the reality of the situation, who knows what we're going to stumble onto? What new realities, what wonderful things that we can figure out because we're out there looking at what's going on rather than trying to think about what happened yesterday. And we do it with that surety that comes out of a well-practiced right attitude that is no longer based in doubt, but it's based in the surety that, yes, we can find, if we're out there looking for it, we're going to find it. Because we know what we're looking for now. And what are we looking for? The end of suffering. Dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. And now we know what that stuff looks like, and we're going to stay out of it. And that's the way to go. And so we have that surety that we can be on guard. But we have no clue yet about what form suffering and no suffering is going to show up as. In the sense of old things that we just finally realize, or new sensations, experiences, whatever it is, we can be there for it. And so that's one of the major benefits of the deeper practice. And when I'm talking about deeper, I'm not talking about how long you can sit, but rather how well focused throughout the day we stay.
Yeah.
And you're up to that kind of teaching, that you're recognizing that you can see it already, and that the best quality is to have a playful attitude, a winner's attitude. Like the game of cat and mouse, never mind the mouse. The mouse is actually the suffering. Be playful like the cat. Have you ever seen a cat play with a mouse? They just sling it all over the place, they're really into it. Very playful. So that's the way that we want to start playing with our own mental disease, a mouse, our own suffering, our own mind. And so that's a way to think about it is that when we see stuff in ourselves, be playful with it. Be happy that we saw it.
Mm.
Be grateful for the moment.
Yeah.
Rather than feeling guilty or depressed or in a state of remorse.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
really to fall into states of remorse. I know I've been there, done that.
yeah, I do this a lot too. But yeah, I mean, what's happening since I called you the first time is that I can just recover from it faster and faster.
Can you say that again? I didn't catch you.
Um, yeah, what happened for me since I talked to you and you taught me certain stuff and certain mindsets, it's just that I can recover faster and faster from these. Like if I've fallen off again, then I can like hop back on it quickly and start again.
That
Yeah.
that's the whole point of it. The whole point is that when we fall down mentally or emotionally, we pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we start all over again. That we don't lay there on the ground saying, "Daddy, Daddy."
Yeah.
Yes, so that's the way of doing it. But there are so many tens of thousands of ways of falling onto the ground.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. It's just you just gotta be on guard all the time, right? Because the same thing that worked right now, you objectify it and you try to do it tomorrow again, and it doesn't work if you like try to do it as an object, kind of, right? If
Yeah, and the best part is that the more you practice this, then the more skills you develop at doing it.
Mhm. And I think also really important is the skill of knowing which skill you have to like use right now, because it's for me in meditation a long time I I thought, yeah, I have to hang off this and I have to hang off that, but then I thought I was farther ahead than I really was. um and so yeah, for me it's really important to like to be able to go back to the basics like every second, because sometimes you just some emotion slips you and you have to just yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So you're right on. You're right on it. So I'm glad to hear this report. I don't really have, other than the enjoyment of listening to you talk, I don't really have that much extra to say. Certainly, no new assignments, because the one that you're doing now is getting such benefit.
Hmm.
And so you keep on doing this. You're making good progress.
All right, thank you.
All right. So, if you don't mind, we'll end the talks now. Kitty's just gotten home, and things have gotten quite interesting, and the sun's going down, etc., like that. So this is a good time to finish. But
All
I
right,
really enjoyed our conversation, and I can say excellent progress.
great, thank you. One quick thing.
Yes.
I really think the videos you put up are really helping me. Also, I sometimes listen to your uh, talks with other students, and I think it's great that you like put titles on the videos, because yeah.
I'm glad that you like it. Um, the hope is that YouTube will be there with these videos long after this old carcass finally stops farting.
Yeah.
All right. I want to tell you something. The word farting that I just used, they did 3 stars. The AI, and it just did it again. The AI on this machine is a church lady. Thou shalt not say farting on YouTube. They did it
Yeah.
again. All right. Well, we'll see you.
Yeah, see you. Bye bye.
Bye
Thanks.
bye.